Welcome back to the McDowell-Phillips house. Today we're up in the attic doing a little more discovery, and Brian and Joanne King have found this table that they wanted to take out and kind of do an assessment and see if it's something that could be used in the museum. So we are wearing our face masks because of safety, but also because of the dust and everything up here.
There's a lot of insulation on the floor of the attic, which you can see, which really makes the situation dusty.
It does.
On the other hand, some of the pieces we feel might be good museum pieces. So let's get this one out of here.
So we're going to get this over here and then dust it off a little bit before we take it into the billiards room. So it looks like this is an old, like maybe a library table or something.
I'm thinking it's a library table.
Has this really cool veneer on it.
We'll take our trusty snow shovel, try to remove some of the insulation from the lower shelf. This is not exactly a white shirt job you want to have.
No, not so much.
Okay.
All right, let's go ahead.
I think we'll have to tilt it up on its side to get it out the doorway. Oh, you're right. That's fine.
All the day's work.
Step over the loose floorboard. Okay.
All right, so now we got the piece out. Let's, does that work?
Yeah, we'll get a light on here a little bit to assess it.
So it looks like a really cool kind of 1890s parlor table, a library table.
Very heavy turnings on the legs and feet. And there's a table down on the first floor that was in the house that resembles it. And we're wondering if it wasn't part of a set.
It could be. So,
and 2 drawers.
Rats, no gold. All right, well, Brian, that's
kind
one
of unusual pegging in the doors. It's a rabbet joint with pegs. So it's not dovetail, a little different joinery method.
All right, well, we can't wait to see what you end up doing with this treasure.
Well, first thing, we'll try and clean her up. Then we'll determine it looks needs just a minor repair.
Sure.
And I think we'll be ready to put it to use in the museum.
Fantastic.
It's going to be nice.
Sounds good. Why don't we go downstairs and take a look at kind of how some of the collection rooms are coming along and just kind of see where you are in that process.
Sure.
So a couple months ago, when we started this documentary and process about the renovations of the house, this was at that time a secondary sitting room or a bedroom, but as you can see, it's been painted and fixed up, and now the Historical Society is in process of moving artifacts and items into the room. So Brian, I'm seeing names from businesses all over the county. Tell us a little bit about what is in this room, where did these things come from, and what is the story that's beginning to evolve here?
Well, the purpose of this room is to explain in our 100 years of existence as the County Historical Society, we have accumulated many artifacts, whether it's photography, advertising items, or actual items used in stores and in the industry in the county. So we use this as a lot of education for people to see how business has evolved in our county.
Sure.
From agriculture to more commercial. And we have some really neat one-of-a-kind pieces that are featured in this room.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm loving seeing the Tebbett's ice cream sign, but then down here looks like original molds for making novelty ice cream pieces, which is pretty cool, and some other advertising pieces. And then this really cool sign up here in Medina's hair store. Tell me a little bit about where was that?
Well, we know it was on South Court Street, about 4 doors down from Washington.
Okay.
It was on the 2nd floor.
Oh, cool.
And the woman who ran this store actually dealt in wigs, costume,
cool,
perfumes, and beauty aids and things like that. So it was quite an interesting store. It's time for women to be able to go out in public and do those kind of things without feeling
that's
embarrassed.
really cool. And then here, another really cool piece, the Henry Furnace Company. Now today, this is Foundry Social and High Voltage Indoor Karting and Mad Brewery. But originally, this was an actual foundry, I believe, started in the 1860s?
They're about around the time the railroad came in, about 1871 is when John Smart moved his business to Medina. hence the name of the John Smart House.
Sure.
But he had a foundry that made cast iron cookware.
Okay.
That very foundry is the same site as what eventually became the Henry Furnace Company, which made home furnaces for many, many years here in Medina. In fact, many homes in the 50s and 60s had a Moncrief furnace, big blue furnace.
And that was the brand that was made here?
Yes, they called them the Moncrief. And they were in business for many, many years, and they did quite successful. We also had the other furnace company that was on Washington Street, Kern.
Okay.
I don't have my glasses on, so I can't read it.
Yes, the
Kern's
Kern
furnace,
Company.
yes. They also manufactured furnaces. And again, Medina was evolving from wood burning, gas fired, to coal burning furnaces,
Sure.
and eventually converted to natural gas. And you still see some of these cast iron furnaces in buildings in the area, which is pretty remarkable.
What I love about this is many people don't realize how big the foundry building is. It has evolved over time, over almost 150 years. But what's kind of cool about this particular photograph, and they have this in the business itself, if you look at that two-story barn-looking structure, that is actually still existent within the building that's there currently. So if you're curious to see that, you can check out this photo or check out the photo there. But then when you walk through Foundry Social into this big kind of barn building, that's one of the original structures. So now on this side, it's kind of cool to see other artifacts again from around the county. It was very popular at the turn of the century to have calendar plates or collectible plates. So we have some here from Spencer and Medina. One of the most historic buildings that is unfortunately no longer with us was the American House Hotel, which was on the corner of Court and Liberty. And what's kind of cool, there's a ring of original room keys from that historic building. So Brian, tell us, like, what's on your side of the shelf? What is the story that we're evolving on this side?
Yeah, this is showing a lot of the evolution of business. As Matt just mentioned, this photograph shows the American House Hotel, which was taken down in the mid-50s by a savings deposit bank to make room for their parking lot, which was a huge advancement in convenience for their customers to have an actual drive-in bank window. And so they made quite a big deal out of that. And eventually now it houses Bicentennial Square, where our public restrooms are located, among other nice fountains and things like that. We actually have the telephone here someplace. This room is about halfway set, but we actually have the house phone from the American House around the corner in a box awaiting to come in and find a home here.
So Brian, is it the intention of the Historical Society, now that you have a little bit more room, not a lot more, and it is going to be a museum, what if people are going through family pieces or they have something that they want to donate that they feel is an important part of our county's history? What should they do?
Well, feel free to contact us immediately. We do have a committee that looks over items. We determine, do we already have it or do we have multiple sets of something?
Right.
Just a month or so ago, one of our longtime citizens was clearing out her home and estate, downsizing to assisted living. She gave us boxes of some really cool advertising items.
Oh, neat.
Bicentennial and sesquicentennial from 1968. Some cool artifacts that we didn't have in our collection. And of course, around the county, as people have items, the melodeon piano in the front room came from a Medina County family. That was Civil War. I think we showed that on an earlier episode.
Yes, yeah.
And things like that. We love when people contact us first. Would give us a chance to look it over.
Sure.
And you never know what people are going to find interesting. Actually, this room, when it was in John Smart House, had the most visitors because people would be enthralled by looking at all the different things. That dictaphone standing behind you came from Don Tubbs Insurance Company, which sat on North Court Street many years. Kids would just marvel that you would speak into this tube and it would record.
Yeah.
And then it would be played back by the secretary who would transcribe whatever business notes were necessary. Cool. And when Don Tubbs closed his agency, he gave us many really interesting business-related items, including insurance policies signed by Blake McDowell, insurance agent. So it's pretty cool how the Blake and McDowell families keep intertwining with Medina business history throughout the county, whether it's in the farmers insurance or up here in the local pharmacy or other businesses and real estate. So we never turn things away without a good check, see if it fit our museum mission. We typically want things relevant to the county history.
Right. So if people want to get in touch with you, they can go to the website, which is Medina Historical.
Medina Society, excuse me, MedinaHistoricalSociety.com.
Okay, or they can go to Facebook on your page and message you
Right.
there.
And we have an email account, mchs@zoominternet.net. Or you can stop at the John Smart House or drop a note in our mailbox. We'll be happy to follow up. And we get several calls a week. People
Sure.
have interesting items, yearbooks, other things from the family history they're curious about. Again, once this room is reset, it's going to be a very entertaining room
Yeah.
for people to look at.
Yeah.
And it recalls a lot of memories. When I was growing up, the only place you could really get ice or kegs of beer, if you're a little older, was Tebbets. You didn't have convenience stores and all the advantages we have today. So Tebbets was quite a big name in Medina for many years, right over here on Medina and Foundry Streets.
Nice. Why don't we take a peek around the corner? Now you're working another display, and then we're going to go back downstairs and take a look at that wonderful bookcase that's now been reinstalled. Brian, I love how you're using every square inch of space that you can carve out of the house. And I think it's really cool. So again, you're reflecting different parts of the county. There's, the Farmers Exchange here in the city of Medina, but then it looks like another farm feed store down in Wadsworth. And then certainly legendary Ida Cannon and the store that she had at 221 South Court Street. What is this thing? I don't even know what to call this. This contraption.
This is actually a McCaskey account register. This was kind of a transition from paper ledgers to what we might have considered an NCR, National Cash Register machine that you see in stores, even the old ones such as Medina Hardware still uses. But this was a simple method. A grocer, and Ida pretty much ran the shop by herself, could keep track of all her accounts. So if you were anybody with an open account in Ida's store, your name was on a tab here and had a corresponding number. And in this back file bin, your number would come up and there'd be a charge.
Okay, so like the slips would go in. Well, there you go.
So there you go. Whatever number you are, you would see what your current account balance is. And if by chance you didn't pay your bill, you got one of these red cards slapped into your holder.
That's
And
fantastic.
Ida did not extend credit any further. So some things never change. But it's funny how she ran such an efficient store with this kind of a register. And people would come in and settle up after payday.
Yeah.
Or the milk check came in. Farmers would come into town. They'd probably go to Farmers Exchange or Shepherd's Mill. They'd stop at the stores, pick up their weekly or monthly provisions, and clear their account.
That's really cool. And then behind us, you have some pieces from Chippewa Lake and Chippewa Park, which is kind of cool. Just recently announced that's now going to be part of the Medina County Park Service. What was the Chippewa elevator? What are these artifacts?
These are more feed and grain elevators. Because of the distance farmers had to travel, a lot of their feed stores were fairly close by. Spencer, Lodi, Wadsworth, Medina, up north, probably go into past Brunswick, maybe more into Cuyahoga County. But you didn't have to go very far to get your corn ground or your grain mixture combined. So we're using these alcoves in here to kind of show off some of the agricultural businesses, but certainly Chippewa Lake, we have a lot more memorabilia here to display. It was such an important entertainment venue for the economy that it really was the place to go for big band music as well as family entertainment, lake resort type of living for many, many years. So I'm glad to see the Park District actually going to develop the land into some public space.
Yeah, that'll be
really
cool.
make something of it.
Well, why don't we head downstairs and look at that bookshelf that was originally in pieces up in the billiards room where we just were. It's been taken down, reinstalled in what we think is the original location, or according to history and photographs. And let's see how that's transformed.
Okay.
So we're back here on the first floor in the little parlor, library, sitting room in the front of the house, and it's really kind of cool to see this bookcase put back in place. So Brian, when we first started this again, you know, this was up in the billiards room, the third floor in pieces. You weren't quite sure what it was. I remember you said this looked kind of like a coffin to you. How did you determine that it was a bookcase and it belonged here?
Well, fortunately, it struck us as odd as why it was there in the first place, because it seemed to me that it was up there and it's an awful big piece for the house.
Right.
Well, what happened is one of the tenants that came along a few weeks ago visiting, she lives in Akron, but she grew up here in the 70s, or lived here in the 70s, and she remembered this bookcase sitting out in the foyer against the back of the pocket doors.
Okay.
And at that time, it had this mirror backing in it, because when it was removed from this room, there was no structure to the rear of the case.
Okay.
So whoever put it in there, probably Drew's grandfather, put a backboard on it, and it stayed there throughout the 70s. Well, then we found a picture here that Miriam kept and helped us identify the same cabinet back in here
In this space.
with the mirror backing. So at some point when the house went from apartments to a home again, the cabinet was put back. Then in 1998, and we know that because of the wrapping paper along some of the items that were taken from the cabinet upstairs, the cabinet was removed and put into the attic. So we're not sure why that took place.
Yeah.
But so it's been actually installed and removed several times in the house. So it explains a little bit of the wear and tear on it, and yet we believe because it was custom fit for this location, it had significance in the house for a reason. And because of the number of books we have found in the house that belong to the McDowell family, I'm sure this case was filled with books, which leads me to believe that perhaps this was R.M. McDowell's study.
Well, what's kind of interesting, as we've talked, you know, throughout the entire series, the house is an evolution. So you and I were talking earlier off camera. We know that this was here, but we're not sure that it was original from this house. It could be an earlier piece. Some of the design and the carving is a little earlier, 1870s, 80s. But what's kind of cool, you were telling me, you know, the drawers, the original drawers go in there, and then these beautiful brass handles, and even that back piece is a little bit earlier looking. But again, it's part of the story of the house and the evolution, and certainly could have been the study. Maybe this was the study. You had a really cool partnership, local partnership. One of the handles was broken. So tell me a little bit, again, about that story, about how you worked with local companies to kind of replicate this original.
This one makes it kind of interesting project because 5 of the drawer pulls were missing this ring. And so it really looked kind of odd. And we didn't want to replace the hardware, although you could find perhaps some reproductions, but they were close to $30 or $40 a piece.
Right.
So I went to my good friend Rick Stevenson up at Medina Hardware.
Who has everything.
He has everything, and sure enough, at the very top of the ladder, he found a box with these steel rings in them. And we said, well, okay, we got the rings, but now how do we get them set back in here without mangling them in a vise? So we went to our other friends over at Standard Welding, right over on Smith Road, and within one day, they had cut and reset the rings into these drawer pulls. So now, once we paint this an oil rub bronze color to match, we'll have a nice looking set of hardware on the drawers, and I think it's going to look really nice. But again,
it'll be sharp.
A little creativity with our local vendors, and they're amazing to work with. They're always so helpful for us, and of course, they always ask about the project in the house. They want to see what's going on, and all of them have enjoyed the series so far.
Fantastic. Well, we hope you'll join us next time when we'll be focusing a little more on some wallpaper and probably some more transformations in the dining room and perhaps in the front parlor. Thanks for joining us today.
See you next time.